Everybody,
I'm a rapper, I'm not a poet. Poet, I'm not a rapper. Guess it's opposite there, cause you niggas just got it backwards. Got me sick to my stomach. Go up on my lantern. New trio is Frio, the most terrible tandem. Deliver shock value, but no, not Timberlanding. Critical observation alerting you ambulances. Clap on and clap off. Rap on and rap off. Hard times for hard rhymes, that concrete, that asphalt. If I did look twice, I guess that's her asphalt. May I assist you and score, get my pass out. Matter of fact, it's what you need. Need to rest, you just fatigue. See, technically I'm filing Mrs. Wallace, I'm Rashid. Know this beat is a banger, have no reason for anger. If I'm slightly deterred, you know I'm giving the finger. I'm a savage like Corey, but not in need of Topanga. Right like 90 degrees, you in the need of an angle.
Welcome to the FREELUNCH podcast. This is your boy Tight. Tight got DC and what's going on with you?
Wow, what's happening there? FREELUNCH podcast, we back.
What's happening?
Yes, sir.
How you doing today, sir? You get a chance to go out and vote today?
I did. I made my voice heard. I voted in the great state of Alabama. So it's been a good day. I've actually been kind of excited about it. This has been one of the most exciting election days that I've had in a long time, and I don't know if it's because we can come here and talk about the experience, or is it just getting older and having more of an appreciation for it. But I've been pretty happy today, man.
Even more excited than when 6 years ago when President Obama first ran?
Maybe. Well, I was excited on the back end of that to see it all coming to fruition, but I think this is a different type of excitement, being that on the front end, just the build up and excitement and really getting into, the candidates and what the platforms are and looking at the strategies and how the different parties are working to try to get their agendas off the table, and just being more aware of what politics is and what this process is all about and how it affects us. I think added another dimension of excitement and anxiety as well going into today. So it's been very interesting, to say the least. Very interesting. How about you today? Did you get a chance to do your just duty as an American citizen?
Of course. I wouldn't have it any other way. I've ever since turning 18, I've never missed a day of voting. So I kind of find it as an obligation and my civic duty to go out and cast my vote and kind of cast my voice, like you kind of mentioned earlier. So I never, ever miss a day to go out and cast my vote.
Do thy duty that is best. Rock the vote. Rock the vote. And interestingly enough, interestingly enough, though, and then, with us doing what we do now, 2016 better look out, because my outlook on it is we're going to be putting information out here all the time for the people, trying to keep our listeners and subscribers informed of what's going on. So we're going to be even more ready when it comes time for, the presidential election and stuff like that. So we on the move.
I think so. I think you're right. And that even kind of takes us to what I like to kind of do my thing each and every podcast, and I kind of want to take us back to when President Obama was first elected. You think I could do that?
Take us back into time.
You think I could do that?
I know you can. Hey, now when we first started to do that, I was a little shaky. I'm like, oh no. But you earned credibility, man. So I'm ready to ride. So whatever you got, I'm with it.
My president is black. In fact, he's half white. So even in the racist mind, he's half right. Even if you racist mind, you be all right. My president is black, but his house is all white. Rosa Parks said so Martin Luther could walk. Martin Luther walked so Barack Obama could run. Barack Obama ran so all the children could fly. So I'ma spread my wings, you can meet me in the sky. I already got my own clothes. I already got my own shoes. I was hot before Barack. Imagine what I'm gonna do. Hello, Miss America. Hey, pretty lady, red, white, and blue fat. Wait for me, baby.
My president is black.
Man, when they dropped that back 6 years ago.
Hard.
Oh, man.
Hard.
Shout out to Jeezy. Shout out to Jay-Z, two of the greatest.
That was actually a prophetic song, though, because Jeezy made that song before it became official. So I guess that's one of those ones where you got to speak it to life, speaking it to existence. And it happened.
It did. And then Jay-Z kind of jumped on the track. And that verse was actually Jay-Z's, a part of Jay-Z's verse when he jumped on the track for
on the remix. Mm-hmm. Brought it up to date.
That kind of leads us into what we kind of want to talk about today. And I really just want to lay it out there for the people and really just have this. I mean, today the right day. Today is November the 4th. So, we out there, and in a few hours they'll be announcing the winners of today's elections. But I think today's topic is relevant because for the next 2 years and then going into 2016, I think that some of the things we're going to talk about today, one being crooked politicians, and then the second being us as citizens really setting proper expectations for what we should expect from our politicians, is topics that we need to discuss. And to be quite frank, BG, nobody talking about this stuff. I don't care if you listening to CNN, if you watching MSNBC. The topics and the conversations that we have are those messages and topics that you really don't get a lot of in-depth conversation about.
And what you find in those common and major media streams, they're talking about politics, but they're talking about it from a global stance. And so when you talk about the whole process as it relates to 80s babies, 30-year-olds in America maneuvering through day-to-day life, how does the politics affect us? How does the politics affect us in our daily lives, and how does it affect our money? And nobody really, gets down to that depth. To go further, nobody really talks about how the African American community, which we come from, is affected by these politicians, affected by the laws and the legislation that goes on. So this is our niche, to talk about it, to take that global perspective that you do get from a CNN and translate it to where we can make sense out of it and do something with it and make more sound judgment and decisions when days like this come around. We have to go vote and let our voice be heard. We need to know what's going on, what's on the table, and what our vote is really going to mean. And so we have a responsibility with this podcast to do that and to give the people the information and keep them informed so that we can move in directions that'll be better and beneficial to our country as a whole, and not just allow it to be a process that only benefits a small portion of the country.
During our kind of prepping for the show, though, we got into some topics and some conversation that is really outside of the two items that I kind of laid out on the table for us to kind of talk about today. But based on your introduction, I do want to kind of bring this to the table, get your opinion on what are your thoughts when you have the individual that says they're not interested in voting, or they have no reason to vote because it doesn't affect them. What is your conversation to that individual? What do you tell that person?
What my stance on it is now is, this whole thing is a crapshoot, right? And you look at your current situation, you look at some of the things that you do see on the news that politicians are doing, people that are currently in office, what those guys are doing, what they have done, you see their track record. And a lot of times when you're approaching it, you may not have you definitely don't have as clear of an understanding of what another person is going to bring, a candidate that's competing against an incumbent. What are they going to bring? You don't know it. So it ends up being a crapshoot. And like we talked about, oftentimes you find yourself voting for the lesser of two evils. I know what this guy has done. This guy hasn't done anything for me in his time in office. I'm gonna vote for a change. I'm gonna vote for something different and allow that person an opportunity to either prove themselves or set themselves up to be removed and replaced with somebody else. But on top of that, it's really just, this is your opportunity to do something. If you're not satisfied with the current situation, current administrations, current legislation that's being applied, this is your opportunity to do something. You either go out, vote, and do something about it, or you're just going to say, hey, I'm just going to take it for what it is and allow yourself to endure the same troubles and the same stresses that you have leading up to that time of voting. So you have to do something. You got the gun, so you either shoot or be shot. And so what are you going to do? Even if the outcome, even if I miss, I'm going to take my shot because I just might hit and things may just work out the way that I want them to work out. So it's not so much of my vote guaranteeing an outcome that I want, but I have to do something. If I don't like it, I have to go out and take my chance on my vote actually being meaningful. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to do something. You have to be willing to go out and put your thoughts and your decisions on that paper and make them count.
The lesser of two evils. So let's kind of get into that, which is a good transition into topic number one. And I can give you a list of elected officials elected by the people that was supposed to be working for the people. However, each one of these individuals are currently locked up in jail for various crimes while they were politicians. Mayor Ray Nagin, New Orleans. Kwame Kilpatrick, Mayor Detroit. Patrick Cannon, corruption, Mayor of Charlotte. Why is it that in this day and age we are voting for the lesser of two evils? And secondly, you know, if I'm an elected official, if I'm running for a city official or city position, mayor, or even at the state level, help me understand, and maybe you can't help me understand, but I sit here often and I think about the mindset. You know, as an elected official, you're supposed to be someone that represents your constituents, and you're supposed to have the better interest of them for all the decision making that you're going to be making. But these individuals that I kind of named out, and it seems like every time you look back, is more and more elected officials. Reverend, Jackson, Jesse Jackson's son, who's over in Alabama in the state prison. These guys get elected, but yet and still they find themselves in these corruption cases and all of these different things that they done got caught up in. What are your thoughts on that?
The ugly truth in speaking about politics is that it is infested with corruption. And in my reading and hearing different stuff, historically, it has been filled with corruption and people scheming and doing different things to grow out their own personal interests. So you've got these politicians talking to the people, working to get people to like them, to vote for them. Maybe some of them even come into the situation with good intentions. You know, they want to come in and they want to be the best civil servant and do certain things, but they get into a system where everybody else is plotting. Everybody else is working deals and creating networks to fill their own pockets and to fulfill and provide access to certain things. And they just get to a point to where they get corrupted personally, and then they just start working in this messed up mind frame. So they go in there and they forget that they were there for the people. They forget about the people and start working for themselves. Then you just probably got some people that are just bad natured to start off with. And they say politics is a way for me to be famous. It's a way for me to get name recognition. It's a way for me to get access, and it's a way to get money. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to get me a spot. There's so much power and access that's afforded in the political realm that people just come in and they just start salivating at the opportunity. And once they get into it and it's surrounded by it, it just becomes a part of their nature, because it's time after time that we're hearing these stories about governors getting caught up in corruption and money exchanges and stuff like that. And so you have to ask the question, is like, is this really what we're voting into? Which makes people question the whole process even further. And then with us having so much more information and getting it so fast, we know about it. And so it's like every day you get something new. And I anticipate that as we get closer to some of the major elections and stuff like that, that it'll be more and more stuff coming out. So I think that's just that hunger and that greed that gets brought out when people get into those positions.
I don't know. I find it interesting because you get these elected officials, like I said earlier, that's supposed to be representation of the people that elected them, and they're supposed to be looking out for those individuals. But yet and still, they're allowed the greed, the fame, the money, however you want to label it, to kind of overtake their initial agenda. You know, they come in there with the whole, and maybe it is just politics, and maybe it is just them giving us one face, and behind the mask, they are those and they kind of really reveal who they are. You know what I mean?
It's the nature of the beast, though. When you look at it in its essence, though, is that we live in a democracy where the greater constituency votes for one or two persons to go and represent your area, go to Congress and represent a bunch of people. So it almost, if you think about it, is a setup. It's like, well, how is one person gonna go in here and speak for what's best for 20 or 50,000 people? Somebody gonna miss out on that, because he gonna probably speak to a smaller portion of that, a percentage of that 50,000, because they're big time donors, or they have a business, or they were buddies or something like that. And that other 25 or whatever that doesn't have a connecting point with that particular politician that's supposedly speaking for them is going to get lost in the shuffle, because there's no connecting point.
Well, have you ever been interested in politics?
I mean, I personally haven't, in terms of running for office, for that reason, because it is a system,
right? And
it is a culture that you go into, and it to me, in my eyes, not knowing, it just seems like it's difficult to really be effective on the scale that you want to be effective, because you have to pick and choose, which is what you see a lot of these politicians doing when they do this whole flip-flop thing, where one day they're pro or they're for this particular agenda, and then you look around 6 months later, they've totally flipped their thought process on the same issue. It's because they're working the crowd. They're trying to go where the popularity is, and that's not how I operate. You know, I just like to stick with truth and righteousness and be able to communicate to people on that level without them feeling like I owe them something.
Right. See,
because
for me,
once you get it, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, for me, I've had a totally different change and perspective since relocating up here to the DC metro area, because for me, I've always been interested, not per se to run, but just being involved and just making certain that I help out, and individuals that I know that are good people that are maybe interested in running, trying to do what I can, even if it's from knocking on doors to even donating a few dollars to their campaign just to see them successful or to see them win. But since moving up here to D.C., my whole perspective on politics has changed. And let me tell you why. It's changed because of what you just said. Power, influence, and people flip-flopping, and just the whole mindset of how politicians, whether they are corrupt or just regular politicians, which we're going to talk about with expectations, but politicians in general, I don't know how genuine they are. And even how authentic they are. You know, I get the privilege of participating in CBC yearly, Congressional Black Caucus. And from participation in those events, I get a chance to hang around a number of our elected officials. And just the way that they handle themselves, and just me being around and really being more observant than anything, a lot of times they come off as being superhuman or being bigger than life. And for me, that's just something that I have a hard time connecting with because of the inauthenticity that they kind of present themselves with when I'm at those events. You see what I'm saying?
The genuine nature is likely lacking because all the time it seems like they're working for re-election, or they're working for the votes. It's like when we were in school, and you know, when you would have like your person that was running for your school student council or whatnot, they get up and they get a speech about we're gonna have pizza every Friday, and you're gonna have a break, 30-minute break, you know, and all this type of stuff. It's a popularity contest. So it's going to be hard for them to just be 100% genuine, because if it's been 100% genuine, it's going to be a lot of people that probably won't like you. They won't like some of the things that you say and some of the things that you stand for. So in this situation, probably it's easier to be kind of in the middle, leaving it be politically correct to where you can go either way and stay in the graces of most of the people without putting yourself out there as a person that really stands for something that might be in polar opposition to some of the people that you want to vote for you, but they might not vote for you because you don't stand for what they stand for. I don't think you can really take a hard stance on certain things and just be 100% yourself, because you stand to lose a great majority of potential voters.
Right. I don't know. I don't like I said, and maybe it's me, because I started to do some self-evaluation really on myself, and that's the reason why I've been kind of hesitant at the beginning of this podcast, because for me, I struggle with the authenticity of the politician. And I think a lot of that has to do whether it's the crooked politician or whether it's the politician that for the most part has set out to fulfill the promise that he said when he was running for election. And we kind of started this debate or this conversation, you and I, and it kind of carried over one day when we were at a lunch. Actually, it was at a dinner when I was in Birmingham, attending my grandmother's funeral. And we kind of got on the whole topic and conversation of how President Obama is actually how President Obama has performed the last 6 years. And for me, for the past 4 years, I've already kind of did a self-evaluation on my personal perspective on how President Obama is performing. But at that particular on that particular day when we were having that particular conversation, my sister was involved in the conversation. Some other friends were involved in the conversation. But it kind of struck me and kind of, I don't know, it was a very interesting conversation from the perspective of how each of us that were participating in that conversation viewed President Obama. Do you remember that?
I remember that clearly, like it was yesterday.
Because I think that a lot of people, and this kind of transition to the next topic, but it's still related, but I think a lot of citizens specifically Black Americans may waver back and forth on how they view the success of President Obama. Would you agree or no?
I would say that there's a change in the tone now versus what it was back in 2008 when he was initially elected, and the campaign leading up to Election Day back a few years ago. There was a great deal of excitement. And it was things had gotten so bad at the end of the George Bush tenure. Things were so bad. Debt was terrible. The economy was down the toilet. We were at war. Things were just so bad that everybody wanted a change. Everybody wanted. We wanted something that looked different. Something that the country had never experienced before, which would have been a man of color. And then he had a perfect campaign in terms of it being tech savvy. It was forward.
Grassroots.
It was grassroots. It was reaching to the younger generation. People our age could connect to it. It was just right on time for what he was bringing, the package that he was bringing. So there was so much excitement, and it was diverse people. It was men, women, all ethnicities that were supporting him. We really hadn't seen anything like that before, because in times past, it's always been white, black, mostly white, a little bit of black in terms of who people were supporting, what candidates people were supporting. But now he's been in for several years. He's had to make some hard decisions. So now we've got more to judge him on and say, well, we wish he would have kept the troops in the Middle East. And you got other people that say he did right by withdrawing. We wish he would not have bailed the car corporations out and spent that type of money. And we wish he would not have done the Health Care Act. So we've got more things to judge him on. And so there's that dividing line again between our individual agendas and our individual expectations. And because there have been some things that have affected the African American community directly, or there are things that are going on all the time. Our communities, for the most part, being impoverished communities, school systems suck, African American men and women being in prison for time that doesn't really that really isn't just in terms of the crimes that are being committed. All these type of things that really plague our community. We will feel like we've got a man that has come in saying that he relates to us, coming from Chicago. He knows us, so he should be, with him being in the position, should be able to speak out to some of these things, and we should get some White House action on some of these things to make our situations better. But when that doesn't happen, when it doesn't happen at the speed that we want, or some of these things just go by the wayside and there's no real governmental action, even down to a situation like the Mike Brown situation in Ferguson, Missouri.
I wanted to bring up, so you got Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
You got Mike Brown. You have the homicides and the killings going on in Chicago.
Right.
You have Obama. You have affordable health care, or Obamacare. What else? You named a few of them. So all of these things have happened under the tenure of President Obama.
We got Bin Laden.
Okay, we got Bin Laden. That's a check. We got Bin Laden. We did.
We got Bin Laden.
Okay. All of things that happened under the tenure of President Obama. So from your perspective, and you kind of mentioned the tone has changed. Mm-hmm. What are your views and your thoughts on his reign as president over the past, let's say the past 4 years versus the past 6? Since passing Obamacare. Because a lot of the debate that we had on that particular evening was centered around affordable health care, and the debate that was taking place on that particular day was between whether or not affordable health care was an actual good legislation for African Americans.
And I'm biased to that because I work.
Am I right?
I work.
Am I right?
Go ahead.
Was that not?
Yeah, that was the major debating point.
And at the table we had two people that were
Health
that were in the
healthcare
profession, and then you had some other individuals that the others were not, but had strong opinions on that particular topic.
Yeah, and I can't remember how it all played out, but what I feel like, being that I can
tell you how it played out. I was the minority in a lot of the conversation.
Well, let me just say that with me being a healthcare professional, I saw the Affordable Health Care Act as a positive because it opened up the opportunity for more people to have access to fairly adequate health care. People that did not have health insurance before, that could not go to or that would not seek out health care because they couldn't afford it and things like that. It opened up a window to allow those people to be based off of their, older people in certain income levels and things like that. They had an opportunity to go get health care that without the act they would not have been able to have. So it was definitely a positive, and it's been a positive for me because I've actually seen and talked to people and heard them express how that has been a great thing for them. That was a great change for them. So for me, it was one of those things that we hear about on TV, hear about the president signing an act and all that kind of stuff, and then actually seeing it in everyday life. So that made it a plus for me because it was an actionable item that we saw come to fruition, and we've seen it benefit a lot of people in the community that I live.
Okay, so what's the alternative to that argument?
In my listening and all that is the provider side. So the Affordable Health Care Act reduces the margin for healthcare providers. So when people come in with, say, like a Medicaid or that type of subsidized type of insurance or whatever you want to call it, the providers don't get as much reimbursement for those or for dealing with those patients. By having more people probably coming into offices and things like that with this government insurance, the return on the service is not going to be as high. So some argument is that you stand to lose money because you're putting money into your equipment, you're putting money into your staff, and all of the things that is required to keep your practice running. You're paying this money out, and then your return is so low, then of course the math adds up, you end up in the red. The flip argument is the providers that are concerned about how it's going to affect their practices, and will they be able to sustain their practices with so many more people coming to their offices with this type of coverage.
Okay, so I bring that up because you have the affordable health care, which now that it's been in effect for a year or so, or a few months, and we're starting to see the effects of that particular legislation. I find it interesting when I talk to the healthcare providers, because they provide an alternative similar to what you just kind of talked about. That's unique. And then I'd like to talk to. I've had to debate with a lot of people about Trayvon Martin and the representation or the lack thereof from the White House, and then you have the Ferguson and you have all of these other cases that kind of get built up, and you have the voices that essentially say that you've seen the president's approval rating fall, and I kind of wonder why is his approval rating falling? Simply because at what role, if we use the Trayvon Martin case for example, what role was the president to play post the stand your ground law?
Politically,
No, just as
there was really nothing that he could do other than send his attorney general to see if there was any civil rights things or anything like that were violated. So really, wasn't nothing that he could do as the president. But on some real nigga, we want him to stand up and say, "Hey, that ain't right. We sending somebody down there, somebody going to jail, XYZ." That's what in my seat.
But see, this is my question though. If African Americans make up 12-13% of the population, and President Obama was elected by no doubt that the African American vote pushed him over the top, but the majority of his votes came from Caucasians and white Americans. Right. So why is the expectation in the black community similar to that of what you just mimicked? We want him to stand up and say, and this kind of is the whole thesis of what I was trying to get to, is really on that evening and on that night that we were having our debate about affordable health care and how President Obama, his approval rating and how he's kind of being viewed in black America, etc. My whole point has been and continues to be, it's not President Obama, it's the expectations that has been placed upon him. Right. Because to me, at the end of the day, what are we talking about? Politicians. He's a politician. And I think the first year or two, when using President Obama as our example, because I do want to bring this home, but the first year and a half, I kind of got into the whole hype of, we got President Obama as the president and we got a black American president, and how great that was, and how he's going to be more connected to what's going on in the middle class and the working class and everyday life of the average American. But as I continue to kind of distance myself and really get out of the aha and the just that whole moment of having the first black president, I kind of came to realization that at the end of the day, even though he broke barriers and he is probably one of the smartest presidents we've ever elected, he's still a politician. And I think
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I think the expectation for him to be someone other than a politician falls on the citizen. Mm-hmm. I use the LeBron James and the Michael Jordan comparison, where a lot of people for the past, prior to LeBron winning the championship ring, they had the whole fourth quarter. He'll give you 3 quarters, but he won't give you the fourth quarter or something like that, or $1, whatever they were saying about how he doesn't show up in the fourth quarter. They wanted LeBron James to be Michael Jordan. They wanted LeBron James to be Kobe Bryant, that electrifying fourth quarter takeover, dominate the fourth quarter, and will his team to a championship. That's not who LeBron is. LeBron James is LeBron James. President Obama is President Obama. He's a politician. He's not your neighborhood community activist that goes and knock on doors and tells the killers or whomever that we gonna stop the shooting. That's not who he is. And I think that as citizens, we really need to set our expectations. I mean, I can understand you can challenge and hold political officers accountable, and I don't have a problem with that at all. But I think when it comes to expectations and wanting someone to respond a certain way when that's not who they are, and at the end of the day they do have a career as a politician, I I don't think that's realistic.
You spot on with that in terms of it being expectation based, and like you said, those approval ratings being based off of like what the people's expectations were coming into the situation, and how the person's, how the presidents or whoever is elected, how their actions are reflected in those expectations. If you don't meet our expectations, then your approval rating drops. But the frustrating thing about it, though, I guess from where I stand as a young African American man with the first, quote unquote, first black president, there is some frustration though.
Quote unquote, what that mean?
He half black though.
He's the first black president.
So it'll be the first half black president.
That you put the quote unquote in there. I don't understand.
I just because he half black. Can you really call him black?
Yeah.
I guess. Well, so okay. Well, according to
how according
if
to
your daddy black.
Yeah.
Your daddy black, you black. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we go by.
Well, the first black president. But anyway, I digress. But it is frustrating though being in this seat, because it seems like when there's a white president in there, it seems like that white president stands for the things that white America is about and all the things that white America wants. So I don't know if it's just we hadn't gotten used to having a person of color in that position. We just got to get adjusted to the realities of it. But it just seems like there's more of a cohesiveness between the white president and the white public. They seem to be in accord, and it seems to be them moving in concert, and that president is more willing to step out if something was to go down in the white community. It just seems like that voice is amplified through the president. The president is more willing to step out there if something happens, versus we do finally have our first black president, and he ain't willing to step out and ride for the black community as a black president. You know what I mean? It just seems like there would be.
I don't know what you mean, and I disagree 100%.
This is the expectation. This is the expectation that frustrates people. It just seems like that if I'm president, right, and I come from Selma, Alabama, and somebody in my community gets gunned down by a federal person, a state person, a government official, or something happens to that person by way of some type of government involvement, I just feel like I would be inclined to say something just because I come from there. I'm connected to that spot. So politically or not politically correct, I'm going to say something that shows my true, genuine connection outside of being the president, my true connection to that space and to that community, because I come from that. It just seems like there would be some tidbit. They would have to catch me and put it on TMZ or World Star Hip Hop or YouTube, a snippet or something where I done went off and said something, that speaks to, that was an unjust action and it shouldn't have happened. They would have some type of snippet.
But this is where we disagree, and this is kind of where that whole debate went when we was talking when I was in Birmingham, and,
right.
and what I say is that it goes back to expectations. Let me say this again: African Americans make up 12 to 13% of the American population.
Mm-hmm.
12 to 13%.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we probably were the group that pushed him over the top, we were not the majority of the group that got him elected, that got President Obama elected. Mm-hmm. So to have an expectation that for every black issue that comes up, he's supposed to speak on it, I don't think that's realistic. He got up and spoke about Trayvon Martin, and essentially gave us a report or gave a statement where he said that could have been him, or he said that if he was to have a son, that could have been his son. He also launched the Brothers Keeper, which was another mentor-type program that he established for African Americans. Me personally, I'm one to believe that him getting elected alone is bigger than anything he could ever do as an elected official, because him getting elected alone signifies or symbolizes hope for that young person in Selma, that young person in Mobile, that young person in Houston. You pick an urban community in anywhere USA, and he gives that child hope that he could one day be president. And I think that alone is bigger than him standing up for any unrealistic, I'm going to call it unrealistic, but any expectation that has been placed upon him unfairly. And I say unfairly because I think, again, for you or for anyone else that wants to say that he should speak up for anything that happens relating to African Americans, I think that's false.
What is the most important thing? Is the most important thing getting that seat and being the president, or looking out for your constituency? Because if you just start with giving hope, which I understand that he did more,
that one thing,
I get it.
It's bigger. It's bigger than anything he could ever do. To me,
I
bigger
get
than
it.
anything.
I get it.
Go ahead. And I'm not saying, by no means am I sitting here. I can tell you, I can give you a list of things where I feel like the president has failed African American, well, just Southern folks in general, that I didn't agree with. But even though I feel like he's failed those things, him being elected to me is bigger than anything he could ever do moving forward from the day he was elected.
I get that because he kicked the door down and he did open that window of hope to say that you can do that. But at the same time, you also have to paint a picture that when you get in this particular position, because you're in this position, do you totally forget or disconnect from where you came from? Because even though we are 12%, we are 100% of who we claim him to be. He's 100% black. So at some point, he's got to, if he gonna be that, at some point, being in our situation, he got to step out on that. Because if you don't do that, you're straddling the fence. He's a politician, so he can politically, in a correct manner, speak to black issues, to issues that are exclusive to black people, because black people have issues that white folks don't have. So if I'm in a position to where I can make things happen in my community, right? And I don't do that, where does that put me?
But I think he has, and I think y'all overlook what he's done.
Oh, I'm not overlooking it. I'm just saying.
Let me give you an example.
There's a question. There should be no question. There should be no question about it. There should be no question about it. There's still questions in the community as it relates to, is he paying attention to what's going on in the community? He would have to show, realistically, and he probably can't do this, but realistically, he would have to show a side of the presidency that has never been shown before. He would have to do things in the presidency that nobody else has done before because of where he comes from. But I understand, like you say, he kicked the door down. So he got to walk kind of light to make room for the next person. I get that. But I'm just speaking from the area of frustration in terms of, what people are expecting in the community. So the next black president going to have to be up there and really talking on that RENS for real.
But I think he's so smart that I think some of the things he's done has been overlooked. Let me give you a perfect example. I do not believe that it was a coincidence by any stretch of the imagination that Eric Holder was elected the Attorney General. Or was appointed. Excuse me, not elected, appointed. That was strategically done, in my opinion, by one of the smartest presidents to ever get elected. And you know who that is? President Obama. Because he knew that he couldn't be the voice to speak up for that 12, 13%. as a lot of us would want him to be. So what he did was he went and he appointed an African American man, Eric Holder, to deal with issues and to be the voice and to be the representation in situations where he couldn't, i.e. Ferguson, i.e. Trayvon Martin.
But then the question is going to be, well, what did he do though?
That's what Eric Holder did. Eric
No,
Holder
the question is
followed
the question is going to be, well, what did Eric Holder do?
Exactly. But he
but
followed the law.
But what did he do? What did he do?
What you mean? What he do? He went down to Ferguson. When has an attorney general ever gone down to even go see what's going on in the situation?
Well, what
Can
did he
you
do?
name one?
Huh?
He went. He first off he went down there. That's enough. To put on an investigation.
Okay, so
he went down there to put on an investigation.
So his work is going to be based on the outcome of this case, right? The quality of his investigation is going to be measured by the outcome.
No, it's going to be measured by if he did his due diligence to make certain that the process was handled correctly.
And how do we know?
It's going to be based off of the evidence that's revealed in the court of law.
So if the evidence, because the evidence, if the evidence and all that kind of stuff don't play,
but he can't manipulate the evidence, BG.
But I bet you,
he can't manipulate the evidence. The only thing he can do is go down there and make certain that a fair and just trial is done correctly. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
This is politics, though. But if it was on the other hand, I bet you an attorney general would have made some moves.
When has an attorney general ever gone down to any case where there was a young African American teen involved? Can you give me one?
But how many times has a white attorney general gone down and saved some white kid or something from a situation that they were in? That's what you got to look at. You got to look at the norm. You got to look at what is the norm. When something happens, when a hate crime happens that's on the other foot or the majority, and a white attorney, what does that white attorney general do when that happens on the other foot?
You're missing the point. You're missing the point.
I'm not missing the point.
I'm telling you why you're missing the point, BG. You're missing the point because was the white attorney general even going down to Ferguson? So I'm
not talking about a white attorney general would not go down to Ferguson because it involved.
That's my point.
But if Mike Brown was a white kid that had been gunned down by somebody black or something like that, would the attorney general have stepped in for that white kid?
That's not the issue.
That's very much the issue because we're comparing our expectation. Our expectation is the standard. Our expectation is the standard. What was the standard before Obama and before Eric Holder?
Standard was there wasn't a white attorney general going down to the Ferguson.
Okay,
that was the standard. The new standard that was set by Eric Holder, who was appointed by President Obama, was to send a representation down there to oversee that a just case was ran. So the standard has been set, and the new standard has been set by this current administration. I understand the point that you're trying to make, but that's apple and oranges to me.
No, which is exactly what I'm talking about. Is apples to oranges when it should be apples to apples. How many times has an attorney general made a trip anywhere in the world in cases similar to this one that involved an American, something happening to an American, and they went down and kicked off an investigation and got the ball rolling?
I don't have that answer, but I'm gonna get
that's
that.
the answer because
if
that attorney general was more forceful in those situations and saved or did whatever they need to do to get justice for a person that might have been of another ethnicity, then we should be definitely getting the same thing from a black man going down there to see about something that happened to a black kid. And it should happen with that same type of tenacity. It ain't just good enough for him to just go down there and make a trip. He was, that ain't nothing. That's just showing us, that's just giving us lip service and say, hey, I went down there, and that's supposed to be good enough. But if he's not putting no tenacity into making sure that that kid gets justice, he could have stayed at home.
But who said he wasn't? Who said he wasn't?
We will know. We will know based off of the trial, if there is ever a trial, because we still can't find Darren Wilson. So we'll know when all this stuff shake out.
Yeah, but I don't think that
and that's going to determine his worth in terms of going down there. But I don't. That's going to determine whether he should have stayed at home or not.
I don't think that's determined based off the verdict in the trial.
Well, I don't know what they should base it off of.
I think it should be based off that a just trial was given.
We got to get the trial.
Well, let's see if this is true.
Now we really don't. If we don't get a trial, then what?
I give you that. That we do have to get the trial, and I do give you that if it doesn't go to trial, then that is unjust. But I think that from his perspective, he has to play the role of the judge, or he has to play the role of the referee or what have you, to make certain that a just, fair trial is conducted. And if it can't be conducted in Ferguson, Missouri, then his role should be making certain that is conducted in a location where a just, fair trial can be conducted.
And then he resigned. And so now what the hell we supposed to do?
He resigned when things are right, but President Obama is going to appoint someone else.
Okay, well, we'll ride it out. But I'm just speaking from a community vantage point.
Yeah, you are, because when you specifically said quote unquote, that caught me off guard there. You said quote unquote the first black. What does that mean?
Because you negate his other half. I've always had that. It's like you just discounting the other part of his makeup.
So what is his wife and his daughter?
Yeah, well,
man, let's get up out of here. This is gonna be one interesting. I can't wait to hit a feedback on this one.
Yeah.
BG,
what's up? We talk real stuff, and this is where politics gets you. It gets you into discussions like that, because there is really no end to it. It's just a cycle. We vote every so many years. We reelect people. We replace people. It's an ongoing process. And when you have that type of situation going on, the conversations never end. It's always something that you can debate and talk about and be on different sides of the fence. So it is what it is.
I think that at the end of the day, to kind of bring us back home, number one is, we kind of talked about cricket politicians, and really just I think the point that I wanted to bring home from that particular topic was more or less just holding these politicians accountable, and really from an accountability perspective, for any politician that listens to this podcast, just understanding that you represent a group of people, and do what's right. If you're elected, do what's right. Secondly, we kind of talked about expectations, and as you can tell and see, we all view expectations differently. But I think that as citizens, we really need to be clear on how we view expectations, or what our expectations is for an elected official. And hopefully they are realistic. Some of you all may listen to this podcast and think that tight is 100% right, or tight is 100% wrong. Others may listen to the podcast and think BG and his viewpoints from an expectation perspective is 100% right.
That I'm wrong for putting quote unquote on the president being black.
Or others may say that BG is 100% wrong.
That was a good question, man. You kind of tied me up when you asked me about their daughters. That was a good question.
Well, I'm just saying.
You stumped me with that one. I don't know the answer to that one.
I think you know the answer.
Well, visually, yeah.
But I don't know. This has been a very interesting conversation. What do you think?
This has been good. And it really just reflects our role. Most of what we talked about is really what we do as the general public in terms of expectations, and frame your expectations when you're going to vote and you're looking at these candidates, and when they get into office, what we're expecting them to do. At the end of the day, they're politicians. They're working to get votes when they're campaigning, and some of them are good, and they're trying to do the best that they can do in terms of representing their whole constituency. But the biggest thing that we should do, being that not only should we go vote, though, when we do vote and then people get into these offices, we got to hold them accountable. You know, we really have to put it on their minds that if they're not going up there and doing what's in the best interest of the people, then they might have to see us unified. They'll have to deal with us in some form or fashion. And by putting that type of pressure and holding them accountable, I really do feel like it puts them in a situation to where they have to be more serious about their job, and they can't seek the political office as a way to have their own personal gain, because basically what they're doing is slapping us in the face. They're saying you're not crazy, you're not smart enough to know what's going on. You're crazy enough to send us up to office. We're gonna get all this money. We're gonna do all this stuff in this political seat, and you just gonna have to deal with it. But it shouldn't be like that. I imagine there was a time before we had all this PC political correctness that if we as a town went and voted somebody up to office and he didn't do what we want to do, the people probably would go get him and do something to him to get his mind right. And so we, not necessarily to that degree, but we have to make it count and let them know that they're up there for our benefit and our good, and not up there to just be gaming and playing around and taking advantage of our tax dollars and our time.
Okay. Anything else we need to leave the people with before we...
Man, I'm done. I'm finna shut up before I say something, and I be on YouTube and beating damage the podcast. But we appreciate y'all listening to us. We have a few places that you can connect with us. We have the freelunchpodcast.blogspot.com site. Go there, check out the blogs. We also post the podcast there. Also, we're on Instagram, Free Lunch Podcast, and on Twitter, Free Lunch Pod C, Pound New South Movement.
I need to also be able to follow you on the IG, because you put some pretty good stuff out there on the IG.
Yeah, I'm on IG too, at BG_DA27KID, BG_the27kid. I'm on Instagram. Check me out. Send me a message. Add me when you do.
Oh,
I'm trying to get to 2,000 followers.
I'm afraid to say this, to take us out now.
You gotta do it, man. You gotta do it.
I'm afraid because
the show is growing. The show is definitely growing.
My president is black. In fact, he's half white.
See?
So even in a racist mind, he's half right.
See?
Even if you racist his mind, you be all right. My president is black, but his house is all white. Rosa Parks said so Martin Luther could walk. Martin Luther walked so Barack Obama could run. Barack Obama ran so all the children could fly. Tyke gonna spread his wings. Free Lunch Podcast. Y'all could meet me in the sky. And we out.
Freestyle out of here.
Oughta be sorry you gotta pardon me. Pardon me, I'm speaking it awkwardly. Charles Barkley, barking, they ain't biting. I'm getting that green broccoli. Properly giving props to the problem. Fulfill prophecy. It gotta be better than that. It gotta be obsolete. Obviously, niggas rolling the dice and this ain't Monopoly. My purpose was to do it on purpose. Fucking apology. Go.